Fat is your friend, especially if you have adrenal fatigue. I'm Dr. Andrew Neville, and I want to talk to you about why. Now, the fat that I'm talking about dietary fat, right? Dietary fat has been vilified, right, in the news and by even the medical establishment, right, that fat will make you fat, that the saturated fat in that steak, right, will jump out of that steak and jump right into your arteries and clog everything up, and you will die of a heart attack, right? That's kind of what we've been taught, right, for decades, many decades. There's more to it than that as we look into it. Fat is actually incredibly important. And if we look through kind of anthropologically, go back to hunter-gatherers and things like that, there are many cultures that have very high fat diets that are perfectly healthy. Part of that need is genetic, right? So it depends on where our genetics, kind of guide us as to, do we need 10 or 20% fat, or are we like the Inuit Eskimos that we need 70, 80% fat in our diet to thrive? There's nothing wrong with fat. Fat also doesn't make us fat. As a matter of fact, it's kind of the opposite. It's more like the sugar, excess sugar and carbohydrates make us fat. So this obesity epidemic is not necessarily about, it's calories, right? If you take in too many calories in general, you're not going to burn those calories. Now you're going to store those calories, so you'll gain weight. But one of the biggest sources of empty calories is more the sugar and carbohydrate side of things, where the body doesn't need all those things and it turns those into fat so it can store it for energy later. Right? So it's more the sugar and carbs than the fat itself, and that's been documented. And you've probably heard people, or maybe you yourself, people do Atkins or keto or some of these other diets where they're higher in protein, higher in fat, and they don't gain weight. In fact, they tend to lose weight over time. Now, everybody's a little different with that. It's not that I'm saying everybody has to go keto or do any of those diets, but it does vary. Fat is really important. One of the main reasons fat is important in our diet is cholesterol. No, cholesterol is good. We absolutely need cholesterol in our body. It's one of the best anti-inflammatories we have. It's an antioxidant. It is the precursor to CoQ10, which produces energy within the mitochondria, precursor to vitamin D. It's also the precursor to every stress hormone you have and every sex hormone you have. So I'm not a huge fan of actually artificially lowering cholesterol levels in the vast majority of people. This whole idea, right, it's called the lipid hypothesis, right? That, cholesterol from the steak jumps out of the steak and jumps into our heart and gives us a heart attack and we die, is pretty thin as far as the science goes. Cholesterol is one of the things that's implicated with regard to heart disease and cardiovascular disease. But there are many other markers that are absolutely important that need to be taken into account when you're dealing with somebody's overall cardiovascular risk, and cholesterol levels is just one of them. In fact, one of the number one reasons cholesterol goes up is stress. Right? You get stressed, your liver is going to make cholesterol. It's not going to come from a steak. Your liver is going to make cholesterol, get it to the adrenal glands so you can produce stress hormone to fight the tiger or whatever you need. It's absolutely essential in our body. Now, let's talk about different kinds of fat. So the fat in animals, basically saturated fat, not all of it, some polyunsaturated, things like that. But any kind of meat, fish, dairy, eggs, as long as my patients aren't allergic to those things, I've got no problems with any of those foods. They do have some saturated fat, which is perfectly fine, right? Even, with regard to dairy, right? I'm a naturopath, so I tend to believe we should eat as nature provided to us. And as of recent, we're here in Pennsylvania, we see a lot of cows. I have not seen a cow with a big old 2% stamped on that cow or skim. If fat was in that product in the beginning, I think it belongs there. And I've got no problems with fat. I do have certain problems with certain fats, primarily the vegetable fats. Because those vegetable fats are different. They're less stable. They could become hydrogenated. They become trans fats. And those fats are problematic. Right? Corn oil, soybean oil, partially hydrogenated oils, all those things, those go rancid real easy and they can be damaging. So those I tend to stay away from. As far as vegetable oils go, coconut oil, olive oil, those are primary. You know, you can get it in avocados and avocado oil. Things just naturally happens. Olives have some fat in them as well. But as far as all those processed fats, you really want to stay away from as much of that stuff as possible. Or Crisco. Oof. So if those things are problems, right? Choose the butter, not the margarine, right? And we know this. The science is all very strong with regard to this. And if we think about it just logically, you know, eat food as it was provided on the earth. If you could picture it growing or grazing, you can eat it, as opposed to something that maybe was made by a chemist in a lab coat in a big sterile building, right? So just question some of those things. Don't fear fat. It won't make you fat. It's actually essential for your adrenals and essential for hormone levels and vitamin levels and energy and vitality, your brain, cognitive function. When you look into the research, it's supportive for just general well-being. So don't go crazy on your fat. Pay a little more attention to the sugars, right? Don't fear fat. All my best.